everyone. What an amazing and inspiring film, right? We are going to go ahead and jump into our Q&A, and I would like to introduce our moderator, Hillary Pierce. Hillary is an Emmy Award-winning documentary producer based in Austin, Texas. She is part of the producing team behind Keith Maitland's dual 2016 documentaries Tower and A Song for You, the Austin City Limits story. Tower won the Grand Jury Documentary Prize and Audience Award at South by Southwest in 2016 and was shortlisted for an Academy Award and was awarded an Emmy for Outstanding Historical Documentary at the 2018 News and Documentary Emmys. So let's give a hand for Hillary.
Thank you, Megan. I'm so honored to be moderating this night. I thank you all for sticking around. I want to welcome our panelists on stage right now. We have some really great local folks here. So Ms. B.B. Araya is an Austin-based filmmaker whose work explores humanity through the lens of women of the African diaspora. She interned for Academy Award-nominated director Richard Linklater, and her short film series We Are was picked up for distribution by Issa Rae Productions and is currently streaming in its entirety on youtube.com/Issa Rae. So welcome, BB. We also have Sarah Kuck. She is an Austin-based director, editor, and camera person. Her films documenting the impacts of gentrification in Seattle and violent displacement in Honduras explore concepts of home and belonging and our connection to people and place. So please welcome Sarah. And Kim Tran, another Austin-based filmmaker and the OK-loved middle child of two Vietnamese immigrants. She has written for Amy Poehler's Smart Girls, was a 2017 screenplay finalist at the Austin Film Festival, and is currently a Michener Fellow at the University of Texas, getting her MFA in screenwriting. She loves making comedies. So welcome, Kim. So thank you guys so much for being on the panel tonight. That was more emotional for me than I expected. In a super meta way, the representation. You know, just talking about, we talk about diversity a lot, and one thing I really, I heard recently that really resonated with me was that we shouldn't talk about diversity so much as we talk about representation and seeing ourselves on screen. So seeing a documentary tonight with these female filmmakers was really inspiring. So I'm wondering, the question for each of you, starting with Kim, what did you see in the film tonight that just really hit home? What resonated with you where someone said something and you were like, ooh, that?
I forgot, I think it was Gina, I forgot what her last name was, but she was talking about the first step when she was making her first film, and she was like, oh wait, no, it was when she was trying to get into film school and she wrote that letter, and she was like, that set the tone for everything I did afterwards, which was Overcoming No. And like, I remember like, oh, I should write Overcoming No down. And yeah, I think that was just really powerful and inspired me.
Sarah, did anything stick out for you that you were just like, oh, I've thought that before, I've felt that before?
Yeah, I mean, almost everything everyone said, but also something that was unsaid was that all these women have kind of quote unquote made it, and so in some of their testimony they were talking about what we all live currently as people who are still like trying to get to their level. They were talking about I don't think intentionally, but sometimes they were talking about things in the past tense because they don't live on that level anymore, most of them. So they were talking about, before it was like this for me, but I think that that's just their lived experience, and that's totally honest and fine. But there was a part of me that was like, well, yeah, that's because you're directing $3 million movies now, or more, like $200 million movies. So part of what hit me was like, oh God, I hope that I'm like some of the examples at the end of the movie. That's like, if you ever make it to that level, just like hire all the women you can. That's like the only goal.
What about you, Amy? Do you have any moments that were like, oh, that was I've totally thought that before.
Yeah, I feel like when Ava DuVernay and Miranda July were talking about sort of the feeling, even Jill Soloway, about being ignored by the institutions and how disheartening that can really be, but sort of flipping it and wearing it as a badge of honor. And I really like that Ava said when she got accepted into the festival finally, she's like, wait, that's gonna mess up my whole thing that I have going on. So I really appreciated that.
Yeah, there's so many moments. We could probably stay here for hours talking about things that resonated. I just want to get some show of hands in the audience. How many filmmakers do we have in the audience tonight? Awesome, awesome. How many, leave your hand up if you're a female filmmaker. Awesome, awesome. Okay, everybody look around and look at who you want to hire. All right, you guys exchange business cards afterwards. So yes.
Can I add?
Yeah, please, sir.
I also really liked when Miranda July was hanging out in probably Portland. She was like, I just want to make like a punk band, but out of female filmmakers. That really did me.
Yeah, if anybody wants to do that, I don't play any instruments, but I would love to.
Yeah.
So, Sarah, you mentioned, like I just want to hire all women. Like that's something that I can do that's within my power. If you have a project and you're teaming up, you're building your team, you can hire all women or mostly women. I want to know about a time where you felt empowered, either by another woman in your industry or even by someone else. Does anybody have any stories where you thought, this person really took a chance on me, or this person really trusted me, or gave me an opportunity that I might not have gotten otherwise that really made a difference in my career?
I have one. So I went to UT for undergrad, and I was in the RTF program where I studied mainly screenwriting. And in the screenwriting department back then, it was all the professors in screenwriting were men, except for one, Cindy McCurry. And I had taken a TV spec writing class with Cindy, and she had an opening in her grad level class for it was like a class where they were like coming up with a TV show. A network I think had bought the pitch or bought the pilot, and how the class worked was there were 2 showrunners in the class. She was one of them, and every grad student in that class would be able to write an episode. And how the network deal worked was if the network bought it, they would buy all the scripts or none of them. And so she had a position in that class for a writer's assistant, and I was an undergrad at the time, and she reached out to me and was like, hey, would you like to do this? You basically just take notes, but it'd be good for you just to see what a sort of writer's room is kind of like. And so I was like, yeah. And so I got to take this grad level class as an undergrad, and then meet the other showrunner in the room who was just a good connection to make. And then one of the grad students dropped out, so I got a chance to, she was like, hey, do you want to write the season finale? And I was like, sure. And so I wrote that, and I was like, this is my chance to impress Cindy and Scott, the other showrunner. And so it was Cindy just continually opening up doors for me. And then when I was applying to Mishner, which is the writing program at UT, having Cindy write my letter of rec, and then having her she's on the board there, so it's just having her be my champion has changed how my writing has improved and the projects I've been able to do and stuff. Cindy's great.
Beth, do you have a story as well?
Yeah, you kind of mentioned it in my bio, which is that being able to have my work on Issa Rae's YouTube channel has just been a huge game changer because of what she's gone on to do with HBO and changing the landscape of television. So, and I actually had a short film that I made before that called Beta, before I did the film series, and Beta got no love, no one wanted, it wouldn't get programmed anywhere, and it took me a really long time, and I was working on it for a year. It wasn't getting any festivals. I was like, fine, I'm just gonna maybe put it online, and I just submitted it over to Issa Rae Productions, and they emailed me and they were like, we want to put it up, and I was like, oh my god.
it's happening. So yeah, just being able to like have my work on her channel has just been huge.
That's awesome. I'm kind of obsessed with Issa right now. I've been binge watching Insecure for the last couple of weeks. So yeah, it's really good stuff. Could you actually talk a little bit more about how that's gone since it's been picked up and what that working relationship has looked like for you?
Yeah, so we shot the series right here in Austin, predominantly on the east side, featured artists of color, like in terms of like the fine art and the backgrounds, artists of color in Austin and the music, and I co-wrote it with the cast, which is women of color, and then it was premiered here. We had a premiere party last year in September. It was awesome, and then we announced there that it would be coming out weekly on her channel. There's like 6 episodes, and it's been great. They've like given me other opportunities. They put me in contact with other people, and it's just been. I feel really like fortunate and blessed to have that relationship, and I hope that I'm able to do the same thing with other people and like just making as many opportunities for people who look like me as possible.
Totally. That's awesome. Sarah, do you have anything to add to that? People that, either people that have empowered you or any way that you've chosen to kind of pay that forward, or suggestion for the audience of how they can pay it forward?
So many choose your own adventures here. I guess I'll briefly say the 2 documentaries I've co-directed with other women, and I think that, and in both of those instances, the other co-director was asking me to co-direct with them, and so I think that even if you're in a place where you're not feeling secure to direct, or for some reason you feel like you need another sister to hold your hand while you do it, just ask someone. Like, it's very empowering to be asked, and it's very empowering to co-direct, especially if you have to go through this insane gauntlet of people asking you every single step of your film if that's what you mean. Like, for a very small tangential story, we were doing the post-production in a studio in Seattle on my first film, and the sound director kept asking us if we were sure about that. And I was like, well, yeah, I'm fucking directing a film, so I'm pretty sure about that. So like, if you need someone else there, just ask another sister, like she'll be there for you, because it's empowering to go through it together. And then I'll also give a shout out to the guys in Austin, because in addition to directing, I also camera operate, and there have been 2 really important camera operators for me to work with in Austin, EJ Enriquez and Jack Lewandowski. They've both like really given me the love and support that I need to become a better camera operator, and EJ especially has been one of my closest friends in Austin, and he specifically goes by EJ. And on his website wants no picture of his like full face, wants to be like from the side. And when I was helping him like edit his website, he wanted that to be intentional, so that obviously people are going to assume he's a male because of the initials, but he doesn't want to look like a woman or a man outright. And so I think that even though we are moving into this space and this discussion of like celebrate women, I think that there's room for feminism to exist in both genders.
I think that's a really good point to raise, Sarah, and I'm glad that you mentioned it, because I think we talk so much about empowering one another, and that's beautiful and wonderful because we can and we do, have the ability to lift one another up. But when someone else can leverage their privilege to empower someone, that's really important too. So it should be noted and recommended to follow in those footsteps. Another thing that you touched on that I think is interesting, that's something that I don't think a lot of people talk about, and I'm wondering as directors how you've navigated it, and that's the loneliness of directing. To be kind of in charge of so many moving parts, and to have people sometimes questioning your decision-making process or questioning your vision. How have you navigated that? Like, what allows you to feel more firm in your choices and confident about what you're doing, and not as lonely as it can sometimes be? Sorry, I know that was a doozy. I got thinking about it, and I know I've heard other directors that I've worked with as a producer, mention that it can be a lonely experience. Sometimes you feel like you're the only one in a bubble.
Yeah, it can. It can really be lonely and scary. But for me, it just always comes down to kind of what you said about sisterhood and making sure I'm surrounded by people who understand and have, walk similar paths that I do. And so we just hold each other down. That's really what it comes down to, because otherwise you can kind of go crazy,
Yeah, I agree. Like, having people you trust in those key roles is so important. And like I always try and get to know, I'm like, would I hang out with this person? Would I trust this person before I work with them, for sure.
Proper vetting.
Yeah, very important.
This might be a little uncouth, but what my team calls that is the no asshole policy, which is just don't hire any assholes. Just don't.
And if you accidentally do, at least they're not in a main role,
Yeah, totally. So in the film, Ava DuVernay, talks about how fun it is to have all the toys, to have all the time, to have all the money, to have the access. I know that no one here has had the full, Ava DuVernay Wrinkle in Time treatment yet, but share a little bit about a moment of filmmaking, of directing that was just pure fun for you.
So 2015, my co-director and I got a grant to go to Honduras to film people who were there in Honduras and who had just recently been deported back to Honduras or were trying to escape Honduras and were not capable of escaping. And so we're in this really intense situation, but we're in a hotel that we've kind of staked out as one of the safest places for people who look like us in the city to hang out, and it kind of became our home base, and we had to be in this hotel, live in this hotel, edit, transcribe, eat, and thank God there's a swimming pool. And even though that seems fancy, it was our only source of fun for almost 3 weeks. And so a lot of the scenes in the film were created just sitting in a swimming pool, because we would be in these horrendous situations all day where it was I was shooting the whole thing, and Meredith, my co-director, completely fluent in Spanish, completely fluent in the situation, was interacting with these incredibly emotional stories. It's almost 100 degrees every day, and just driving around this crazy situation, literally, and in a car, and metaphorically in our brains, and trying to just we had a concept for where the story was going to go, but then on the ground the story just kind of devolved and evolved into something else. So how are we going to make this into a piece that functions as a story? And as difficult as it was to reprocess that in the moment, in this place where we really didn't feel safe, we got to tell a story that we felt was really, really important to tell, and that in itself was the fun. It was just this is the fun. There's no other fun than feeling like you're doing what you're meant to do, even if it's horribly uncomfortable physically with the heat and the sun, emotionally with the context and the people around you. There's no other place to be, and that's how I felt related to the women on screen, because they were clearly going through kind of the same thing. They were this is horrible, we're being sexually harassed, we're not getting paid right, but there's nowhere else for me to go because this is my life and this is my joy. So I think that I went off in a different place on that question, but I think that was the fun for me.
Kim, you like to work in comedy. Mm-hmm. Has there ever been a moment you've just been in the zone? You're I'm killing it right now. This is a blast.
So I come from an improv background, and so I find a lot of value in collaboration. And I know some directors are from the school of thought where it's I don't want input from other departments or other people, and I also get that because it might make the set run awry or something. But because I usually have such a small set, and because I'm usually working with people I trust and like and hang out with outside of set too, I like to open it up for like what can make the comedy better. We can improv some stuff. And so on one of my films called Pussy Talk, where it was about this girl who had a talking vagina, and the ending of the scene, which was also the climax, also no pun intended, but it was like the magical vagina like creates an orgasm for the girl. I was playing the girl, and I was just like not getting it right, and so and it was also like 95 degrees the whole time we were shooting inside the apartment, and so we went outside and sat on like the porch, and we were just improving ways I could orgasm better, and it turned out great. Beth?
That's funny. Pussy Talk's really good. I don't know when everyone will get a chance to watch it, but I loved it. I think there are a couple moments. So the first movie, or the first like short film I made when I moved to Austin, we were shooting like at Half Price Bookstore, and it was like we got to go in early before anyone else got there, and the actors were sitting on the floor, we were shooting them, and I like sat on the floor with them. It's the first time I like wasn't watching the monitor, but I was watching them, and I forgot that we were on set. Like, it was like this magical moment where I was like just very invested in these people's lives. I was just watching them live their life. And then everyone's like waiting for me to call cut, and I was like, oh, sorry, cut, you know? So that was a great moment, because I just feel like filmmaking is just this like extremely like magical process that like marries all these beautiful, wonderful art forms, and yeah, I love it. Another time I think is when we were shooting the film series, and the film series you get to like drop in on different women's lives, but the last episode is when they're all together, and we were shooting at the Moha here in Austin, and they already don't have AC. It was in June, and so everyone was kind of just delirious, and then we like popped a break or something in the electrical happened that wasn't supposed to. And so we had to just like sit around, and we like, me and the producers, we didn't want to tell anyone why we weren't shooting, but like it held us up for an hour, but we just like, everyone was kicking it with the extras. It was just so much fun. Everyone was like sweating, fanning each other, and it was just one of those moments where you're just like, wow, life is happening right now.
There's a common denominator amongst everyone's stories where it was really hot, so maybe we're all making films in the right place. One of the best questions I've ever been asked is something I want to ask you guys right now, and that's, what haven't you done yet that you want to do? Might take a minute to think about, or maybe it won't. Maybe it's been on your mind.
Well, I want to make a feature film. That's kind of what I've been gearing up to do with all my shorts, and so, you know, hearing their stories about, you know, the feat of making a feature definitely gets me more prepared, but also still very excited of like, the mountain's going to be really big, but I think that it looks like the industry is finally going to start making way for it, and whether that's like actually in the industry or like in the independent bubble outside of it, whatever the case may be, hopefully people are ready for, you know, those kind of stories, and so I look forward to hopefully making a feature soon.
I think we look forward to watching it.
Yeah, I would echo that. I think everyone's always excited to make something bigger and larger. One, because you get to express more of your own ideas and more of what you've been wanting to say, but also because it is that thing that hopefully takes you to the next level. I've been wanting to tell a story for about the last 7 years that I am finally gearing up to tell, so I'm really excited about that.
Man, I can't wait to watch your stuff. I would like to make a feature. I think before that, I think that's like down the line, I would like to make more shorts first. And I'm like, my main goal is to work in TV, so I think my next step is I want to like do a web series first and just get that practice in like writing short form stuff and like having multiple episodes of it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think I speak for everyone. We're all looking forward to those next projects, and I just want to say, like, hire these women, hire the women around you. If you're making movies, think about that critically, think about who can be on your team and take a chance on people if, you have the power to do so. I think I'd like to maybe, I don't know if we have time, but maybe open it up to the audience a little bit, if anybody has any questions of these amazing filmmakers we have on stage. Laura wants to know, getting started, did you encounter a challenge that really tested you, and how did you kind of flip that around or overcome it in some way?
I will second Sarah's claim of having someone to hold your hand through it with. How I got started even making stuff is I made comedy shorts, and how I even got the courage to do that is me and my best friend were we want to make stuff, we need to hold each other accountable and do it, and we had both never really done our own thing like that before, and so it's so much harder, or it's so much easier to psych yourself out when you're just by yourself. But when you have someone accountable, you're like, okay, we're holding each other accountable, we believe in each other, we're really scared, but we're gonna do this, and we're just gonna pretend like we know what's going on, and it'll be fine. And after we shot our first thing, have you seen Bert the Cat Caller?
Yes.
Okay, that was the first thing we did, me and Lindsay. So we shot that, and after we finished it, my friend Lindsay and we did it together. We held each other, and it just felt so good. I think we cried, and yeah, just having have a support system, because it's really hard. Even if you're a director who's doing it alone, you still have a support system, and your DP, your editor, something, So yeah, just don't go at it alone.
Trying to think, because there's so many options here, The first thing I made here, actually, the same one with the bookstore thing, I was supposed to shoot it a month prior to when it actually got shot, but I had a situation where some people pulled out last minute, and that kind of stuff can really in the moment drive you a little crazy, and you're see, it's a sign, I shouldn't be doing this, give it all up, let it go, throw in the script, forget it, this is not meant to be, all the voices come alive and strong. But I was no, I had a moment where I was just no, it's gonna come together. I found other people to fill those roles, and it ended up being way better than I had even anticipated. So I think when things get hard, it's just important to remind yourself this is happening for a reason, there's a lesson to be learned, and make sure you're taking a tool away from it, put it in your backpack, because you're going to need it later.
That's good advice. Sarah, you've worked in narrative and documentary. Do you find the challenges to be different? Or do you find commonalities?
Hang on, I was gearing up to tell a story.
Oh, tell the story, sorry.
No,
tell
it's fine.
the
I was
story.
wait, can I still make it work? Well, I was going to say, I wanted to talk about what we were talking about earlier, kind of this imposter syndrome. I directed a commercial last October, and right before then, I had gotten an email from a distant friend of my sister's who works at this company in New York, and she was like, oh, I heard you direct films in Austin, would you want to direct one of our commercials, apply to this person? And I did, and we talked a little, and then she passed, and I was like, oh, all right, whatever, I guess I'm not good enough. And then Hurricane Harvey happened, and for whatever reason that wiped out their whole schedule with the other team they were going to go with, and they had to reevaluate, and they were just like, well, we're going to go with you if you can do it in 2 weeks. And I was like, yes, I will do this in 2 weeks, and I'll make it happen, and it'll be better than you ever imagined. And just kind of the work ethic they were talking about, when you're a lady, how you have to do it. And it worked, and it was awesome, and they hired us for the second round that they wanted to do in April, and so I felt very vindicated in that situation. But I think that the difference between documentary and narrative is mostly just in the process of story flow. I think there's a lot more upfront that you can know in the narrative story flow, where in documentary you're kind of excavating like an archaeologist like throughout the story, where you like kind of think you know where it's going to go, but then you're like, oh my god, this amazing thing came out during the interview that we had no idea where it was going to come from. But also maybe that happens within especially comedy as well, if you find like a cool nugget that happens like you were talking about.
Yes, but probably not so much in that it will
Yeah.
pivot like the story and everything, just like a fun little joke.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, but I think in the terms of like hiring people, like these ladies were saying, like having your team be solid and things like that, I think it's really similar.
Wondering if you guys have any questions of one another, because you've all worked in some really interesting capacities and with different material, and I just wonder if you read each other's bios and thought, oh, I'd like to know more about that.
Yeah, I'll definitely, well, I already am friends with you on Facebook, but I'll definitely add you, Sarah, and get your contact.
I guess I don't mean to interrupt you, but I guess I'll say that I read y'all's interview, or your, kind of like I read about you before we got here, and then I read your bios right before this, and I was just really impressed. I was like, damn, the Austin scene has it going on. These ladies are cool. What am I doing here?
Dude, ditto.
Yeah, but I think that that's the thing that I was talking with Hillary about earlier today, and we were talking about like what should we talk about, and I was like, I think we should just talk about how we never feel good enough to be where we are, even though we are. Like, we should just like be cool. But also, I literally, like, right before we walked into the theater, I was like, Hillary, I'm not cool enough.
Y'all are all like so cool, and I feel extra cool being asked to ask you questions.
But also, like, in the audience, I think that there's some ladies I talked to before we even came into the theater, and I want to give a shout out to Austin Women Film, because it's the only reason I know anyone in film in Austin. And it's such a good group, and I think that everyone feels this way, and so just come and have a glass of wine during happy hour pricing and hang out, because it's the way to do it.
I want to second that, because I often have, people reach out and they're like, oh, I'd like to meet more people in the Austin film industry, where do I start? And if they're a man, I'm a little at a loss for what to tell them to do. If they're a woman, I'm like, Austin Women Film, come next time. Because I honestly, I have to give a huge shout out to Amy Bench, who is a DP here in town, and she invited me to Austin Women Film. When I first moved to town, we were friends in New York, and I've met everyone I know in this town, in this industry, through Austin Women Film, and it's something that Laura has kept alive, and something that's so simple as having drinks with friends. I mean, it doesn't have to be complicated. That's the beauty of it. It's all about who you know, and we know each other. We know each other pretty well if you just come hang out second Wednesday of the month and have a glass of wine or two.
Yeah, I want to third that thought and just say, because people ask me that too, like, how do you meet people, how do you get started? And I met my producing partner Tamara at an AFS event, so shout out to AFS. It was the 25th anniversary celebration, and we met there, and we've gone on to do a lot of fun stuff together. So just putting yourself out there and meeting people and networking laterally, and meeting people who are as hungry and curious as you, and just watching things flourish together.
So true. AFS.
Yeah, I agree.
Kim?
I interned at AFS because they have an internship program here, and it's great. And one of my fellow interns now works in the exhibition department. I wonder if she's sitting there. Lisa, she just did. And another, so many others are working out there in the theater. But yeah, so I met the office was giving a tour to one of the national film brats, and through that I was talking to a random person, and we were talking, and she was like, oh, my friend is moving out to Austin, let me give you her contact, let me give your contact to her. And they did that, and then that's how I met Aaron, who produced my last short, and is sitting right there. So AFS, but also literally any other film entity in Austin, just go and you'll meet people.
And even improv too. I started doing improv as soon as I moved here, and I met a lot of film folks there. and people who are interested in doing film, and it's also just a great way to make friends too. So.
We have such an incredible community. Like, we're extremely, extremely lucky to have an improv scene, an amazing film society, multiple film festivals, volunteer at the film festivals, go join at the make level of AFS, and go to the workshops, do all the things. And you'll have a good time, and you'll meet amazing people. So thank you all so much for coming tonight. Thanks to AFS and Awesome Women Film, Laura, Lisa, Megan, everyone who was a part of this amazing screening. I was extremely moved by this film, and I'm so glad we got to share it together tonight. So thanks.